This is the talk about where do we stand today, women in the economy. There's a lot to talk about, I think you'll all agree, and it's wonderful to see you all here. My name's Isabel Berwick. I host the FT's Working It podcast. The FT is proud to be one of the sponsors here today, and I'm delighted to see so many women in this room built for men. It is fantastic. So I'm going to be joined by these three amazing experts. We're going to talk for about half an hour. We'd really like your comments, questions at the end, so we're going to leave plenty of time for that. So to my immediate left, I've got Romi Savova. She is the founder and CEO of PensionBee. It's the leading online pension provider. She founded PensionBee in 2014 to simplify pension savings in the UK. And I used to be a personal finance editor. I know how complex pensions are, so thank you, Romi. It was following her own harrowing pension transfer, and she previously worked in investment banking, and she has an MBA from Harvard Business School, so she knows what she's talking about, thankfully. Selina Flavius created Black Girl Finance. It's an award-winning financial coaching and training company for Black women, and it addresses the difficulties that Black women particularly face due to the gender and ethnicity pay gaps. She also hosts a podcast, runs events for the Black Girl Finance community, and has written the Black Girl Finance Guide. Thank you, Selina, for coming today. And Bev Shah, on my far left, is the founder and CEO of Hive. It's a network for change. Hive is a think tank and advocacy group that aims to build an inclusive and successful investment management industry, and it's based on trust and diversity. Beth previously worked in the city for 15 years, and she started as an equity trader at Bear Stearns. That's probably a whole other event talking about that. Crikey. Right.
I promise I didn't blow it up.
So I'm going to start with a question for all the panelists. And I think we have to start this discussion with a mention of the turmoil we're in at the moment, the British economy, as well as the wider global trends. And I wanted to ask the panelists how they each feel about the economy and the investment outlook, and any tips they have for the audience on staying calm or not staying calm at the moment. So I'm going to start with Romi first.
Well, I think anyone who reads the headlines, which I'm sure is all of us, will be feeling a little bit anxious and just wondering, what is going to happen next? What is even happening right now? And I think that feeling will be echoed around the country, and I think possibly around the world. So I think it's important to remember that we are all in this together. The outside environment is very uncertain, but we've also made a lot of progress along the way. And we'll talk about that a bit more today. But just the fact that we can be having these conversations so openly and so honestly, I think is a lot of progress. I suppose my main consideration right now, given the external environment, is to focus on what you can control. And actually, your money, your expenditure, your savings, what you do with that, a lot of that is within your control. And so hopefully we can explore more of that today.
Brilliant. Selina, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. On our platform, Black Girl Finance, we're always talking about what's going on in the news, and suddenly having to talk about politics. I don't think we were doing that so much until 2 weeks ago, and how it kind of intersects with the economy. And the lady who does my social media, I can't afford to have her on payroll 24/7 because of all the changes that are going on. It's just been crazy. But I would just echo what Romi has said. I gave a workshop yesterday, and the main message is, whether there's a recession, whether the markets are going crazy, whether or not Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng are, doing whatever it is that they're doing, those are things that are completely outside of our control. One of the big buzzwords for us at Black Girl Finance is about building financial resilience. And this is the time where we need to be doing that, and doing things like making sure we've got emergency funds and things put in place so that we can weather the storms. Also understanding that, the economy is quite cyclical as well. So we will all see a recession at some point in our lives, or more than one. And just having that financial resilience built in is a good thing. Number one, doing the investing as well. We're all here at Vestpod, planning for the future as well. I think those two things are key. and I think I've gone off point. I can't remember your question as well. But yes.
It's just, yeah, how do we live through this chaos, Bev?
So I look, markets are cyclical, and I spent the most of my career as a frontline investor. I started my career when .com went bust, and I lived through the credit crunch. It was painful. But also my tips would be, which in hindsight, I wish I'd known back then, was this is a great opportunity. So if you know where you personally stand with your finances and you understand what your outcomes are that you're looking to achieve, like what are your different pots of money? Are you looking at your pension, for example? Well, most of you look like you're really young. And if whether you're 20, 30, 40, or even 50 in this room, you're not going to be retiring tomorrow. You know, there's a saying in the city that they always say, history does not repeat, but it rhymes. So yes, markets are cyclical. And this, for me, I see the current market as sale of the century. This is bargain hunting time. If you've got a small pot of money that you can put in, you will see that if that money is for your pension or for something in the future, this is a great opportunity at the moment. So don't get panicked by what you hear in the headlines or what you see. It's all aggregated news, and they want you to panic. This is time to keep your head on. And, you know, ladies, we know how not to kind of panic. Let's leave that to the white men in the city, all right? So that would be my tip. It's like, don't look at the headlines, look at your own finances, plan out what you want. And the only other thing I would say is, yes, there is a cost of living crisis coming. Be mindful of that as you head into Christmas, because none of us know actually what the bills will look like. And those bills aren't coming our way until next year. So just be mindful as we head into those periods where we do start to spend lots of money and then all of a sudden realize, it's maybe not going to be as bad as they think. Maybe it'll be worse, maybe it'll be better. But if you've planned for it, then you're in a really good place. And you used the word resilience, right? Well, that's what we are as ladies.
Yeah. And talking of resilience, you know, we're talking cyclical here, but just very long term, we've long lived with pay gaps and ethnicity pay gaps at work, and that attendant knock-on effect on our pensions. Many of us have probably worked part-time when our children were small, that kind of thing. There are gaps everywhere. And I wanted to ask Selina particularly, why does that persist? And what do you think would, or perhaps what you all think, would really help to get things moving? And do you have any personal tips for the audience?
In terms of why the gaps exist, so on my platform, I talk a lot about the gender and ethnicity pay gaps, and there's so many other gaps that we could talk about. Obviously, we spoke about the housing gap earlier. There's credit gap as well for women in terms of kind of credit scores being lower, because sometimes we tend to put kind of loans and things in other people's names, not our own, or it could be just a cultural thing. And I think the reasons why they exist are because I think traditionally finance and the financial space was built for men. I feel like we're in a great place now, and that more women are building, banks and platforms that allow us to take control of our finances. At the same time, kind of the way the media markets kind of money to us as men and women is very different as well. So men are often taught about investment strategies, and women are told to, buy less shoes. So I think we really need to be mindful of kind of just what's going on around us, and some of those kind of thoughts and feelings about money that we've picked up over the years, just because the way kind of the system's built and it's marketed at us. I think what we can do is just, I talk about the gaps also. It's quite depressing, to be honest, talking about kind of pay gaps and ethnicity pay gaps, because these, they're caused by quite systemic and ingrained kind of histories. So it's going to take a long time to unpack them. But what we can do in the meantime is, if we are aware, just making sure as we go through our career, making sure that we're asking for those pay rises. And I was on an event yesterday, and someone mentioned the fact that they're a hiring manager and that women don't often, negotiate salary whereas men always do. And then particularly women from diverse backgrounds, we're not doing that. So we need to do that. And then we also need to be really intentional with our finances. So what are we doing? Are we investing? Are we just simply saving like we've been kind of taught and conditioned to do? So yeah, just being really intentional with what you're doing and with your finances, and as you navigate through your career as well, is a big thing.
Romi, what's the state of the pensions gap?
It's still pretty dire. So women at points in their lives can have £100,000 less in their pensions than men. And that is a really, really big number. And I think the reason why that number exists, why this gap is so incredibly wide, is because society is set up in a way that favors wealth accumulation for men over wealth accumulation for women. And what do I mean by that? I think that most of us will have experienced either the anxiety or the actual experience of having children. And for many of us, you know, this is not really, it's not an optional decision as some people will make it seem out. It is a decision that, you know, most of us end up making as women. And the world is set up in a way to, you know, to penalize us for that. So whether it's from the fact that we are the default parent and the parent who ends up staying at home if a child is sick, or the parent that goes through pregnancy because physically that is just what happens, or whether it's because there's part-time work afterwards, or whatever it is, the world is set up in a way that women do a lot of the free work that comes with childcare. It ends up being a woman's business. And I think when we modeled this, you know, we thought, well, how do we change this? How do we actually close these gaps so that they don't exist? And there's two things. The first is pay equality. And I think if you are working somewhere, if you are an employer, this has got to be top of mind. Pay should be equal for men and for women doing the same work. So that I think is priority one, and that's still not the case when we look at the statistics. There's still a gender pay gap even now. And I think the second thing that we can do is enable men and women to work equal hours. Because even if we close the pay gap, actually the hour gap still means that women will have less in their pensions than men. And to do that, we need to share the responsibility of childcare. And if we don't do that, then it will never be equal.
Yeah, it goes a bit beyond the gap, doesn't it, Craig? But I wanted to take perhaps a more macro view. And Bev, I know you've done a huge amount of work to try to promote women and more diversity in positions of leadership in the city. You know, how do things stand at the moment in terms of, you know, women being at the top of organisations that are making these big decisions for us, and wider diversity inclusion in finance? You know, what's the state of play, and are you at all optimistic?
I'm optimistic about the direction of travel and pessimistic about the speed. But I would say this, and it's less doom and gloom that maybe we've just said. It's less than 50 years since women were allowed to invest or in this country, and not personally invest, to step foot on the London Stock Exchange floor. You know, that's 50 years. So we're talking about, actually in that time, we are now sat in a room packed full of women who are interested in their financial future. And we have made huge strides, and that fills me with great positivity, because I don't feel like we've just got our foot in the door now. I feel like we've just rammed our shoulder in and we're about to blow it off. You know, you have got firms here like Schroders, one of the largest asset managers in the world, and I have a lot of respect for them, who are sponsoring an event like this. 5 years ago, you would have had firms in the city sponsoring events for women that were for the wives of their high net worth clients, and it would have been a champagne reception at Harvey Nichols. You know, that's the kind of visibility we got as women from the city. Now the city has recognised that we collectively are not a niche, but a revenue chain for them. At the end of the day, you know, they don't have the low-hanging fruit of the patriarchal man at home who's going to make the decision. You know, we're all going out to work. We may not be valued the same in society, but we are going out there and we're breaking down doors. So the direction of travel is there. And we just have to keep shouting. We just have to remember that we value ourselves. At City Hive, sometimes we call some of these gaps the kids' shoes and cushions gap. And that's because often in households, we put our money towards those things. You know, I've got a traditional household. I'm married to a man, and I don't think he's once thought about what our house looks like and what our children are going to wear. It comes out of my salary pot, even though we've got a joint income. And I think those are the kind of things that we need to remember, that £100,000 pension gap will come from remembering that actually we don't have to pick up the burden of all of those things, that our future is important.
So just to pick up on that idea of, you know, us as women, we as women having power, you know, what should we do about our own personal ethical standards? Where should we put our money? How do we seek the right kinds of ESG, which I think probably many of you know has taken a bit of a beating recently. You know, the idea of ESG being good at per se as a thing seems to be being challenged. And Romi, I wanted to start with you. What do you advise clients? You know, how can we use our money in the way that we best want to?
Well, we at PensionBee, we've very much been on a journey when it comes to how to invest pensions in a way that reflect our beliefs and also our desire for financial returns, because it is your pension and you have to be confident that you can get both of those things. And when we first started off, we had a plan, a product that would invest more of your money in companies that are aligned with Paris. However, it would still invest in oil companies, just the better ones, not the really, really bad ones, the ones that were promising that they would change. And the more we talked to our customers about this, the more they felt, well, I don't want to be invested in fossil fuels at all. And we scoured the market to try and find a pension plan that would help you be fossil fuel free, a mainstream product, and it didn't exist. So we went off and we built one in collaboration with one of the world's largest asset managers, PensionBee's fossil fuel free pension. And that is now available for individuals, for anyone who wants to invest their pensions in a way that doesn't support fossil fuel production. So that is certainly, you know, the way that we do it. We listen to what our customers want and then we deliver it. And I think we are probably going to move one step further, because people increasingly want to be investing in companies that are not only not doing bad, but that are positively doing good. And that doesn't exist in a mainstream way in pensions yet, but I would say watch the space, because it's something we hear from our customers they really want and is coming very soon.
Selina, what do you hear from your clients about how they want to invest their money?
I think it's the same thing. I don't know if it's just been a bit of a kind of sea change over the past few years, but everyone does want to invest. They want, I mean, particularly with my community, they want to support, you know, Black founders or, you know, companies that treat their kind of employees well. And it is, you know, one thing that we do is just steer them towards those platforms that allow them to be able to do that. So that's how we kind of help, because we don't do the kind of financial advice. We don't have a platform that we can direct people to, but we always just encourage them to, you know, do the research, because there's lots of kind of ethical companies out there that you can now use.
And Bev, I wanted to just chat to you for a minute about this whole ESG question. I mean, what's happening? You know, what do you think is going to happen? What should we tell the audience about ESG?
I mean, ESG is a very muddy space, really, because there's so much terminology and jargon. And really, you know, what I presume customers want to know is whether they're investing for good or for bad. You know, no one wants to know that they're investing with, you know, arms companies or whatever else it is. In fact, 15 odd years ago, I used to be an analyst in a private client investment firm. And one of the funds I used to look at was the opposite of ESG. It was called the Vice Fund.
I remember that.
It was a beauty. Someone had gone wild with a clip art. So there was, you know, it was arms, booze, porn and something else. This was the pre-ESG days. Like if someone phoned up and they wanted an ethical fund or an ethical product, it was generally someone's granddaughter who cared. So that would be maybe someone in this room, and it would be fair trade coffee that they would be told they could invest in. So the market's moved massively on, thanks to initiatives like the UN-backed PRI, which is a pledge that asset managers sign up to that to link to the principles of responsible investing. But I think so it's a muddy space, and there will be you have to do your homework. You have to see where you want to put your money and where your morals align with that. It is also important to remember why you're investing, because there is, like, in the city at the moment, there's this big kind of idea that women only invest to save the world. We will only invest for social reasons. Actually, the first reason I would say is actually money. We're investing to make money, and I think they've forgotten that. Men out there also want to invest for good reasons as well. So I think the first thing is to look at that. The other thing is look at who you're investing in, the company you're investing through. It's not just the fund, it's not just the fund manager. It is firms whose names you see wrapped around taxis and you wonder who the hell is that planet, whatever planet that company's named after, because they often love, Greek mythology and all the rest of it. But it's looking at them, looking and seeing it, who's on the board of that company, because they're taking your money and they're making money off you. And you can decide who you invest with. So I'm on the board of a impact platform called The Big Exchange, which is an investment platform launched by The Big Issue. And they recently launched a filter purely for female fund managers, so you can find them. Now, I'm going to put this out there, but having a set of ovaries or your gender makes no difference on whether you're a good investor or not. There are lots of reasons why you can be a good investor or a bad investor, but your gender is not one of them. But they would have you think that. We are constantly being told as women, we don't know how to take risk. Well, I tell you what, I gave birth twice with no painkillers. I know how to take calculated risk, ladies. And it's not true. The thing that you need to remember is that if you find a female fund manager in the city, and at the moment only less than 10% of active money is managed by women, they are probably the cream. Because at the end of the day, if you've managed to survive in the city and you as a woman, you're going to have great performance. You're going to have to be better than the men, which is like any industry, right? We know that. So I would say go and try and find yourself some female fund managers to invest with. They may not get it right. They may not always outperform, but they probably have the skills that actually their peers may not have. So
that's great advice. And I just wanted to bring it back to some other sort of financial things now, like mortgages, credit cards. Selina, there are gaps there too. How can we help overcome those gaps? How can we manage that at the moment? Mortgages have been massively in the news recently.
Yeah, again, just back to my original point, just being really cognizant of building the importance of building your own credit score at all times. So whether you're kind of a university student or whether you're about to, embark on a partnership of some sort, getting married, etc. I think we just need to be really, really cognizant of the impact of some of our decisions of, if we're not checked in with our finances, what are the kind of longer term implications of doing that? So that's what I would say. And in terms of mortgages, I think someone said on the earlier panel, it is a really scary time. At the same time, we are all in this together, but not all of us are impacted in the same way. I still need to kind of dig out. I've been trying to remember, when was the last time I remortgaged? Is my mortgage deal coming to an end? I still need to do that for myself. So, just check in and just see what's going on with yourselves financially and just continue to do that throughout your lives and whatever situation you're in is important.
Thank you. And to take it out again, what do the panel think that a future economy that prioritises women's lives and our financial security, what would that look like? Is there one policy change that you'd like to see that you could summarise? Romi, you first.
I've got so many, and I'm going to stick to the top ones. I think on childcare, I think there needs to be better tax incentives to enable women to actually stay in work, because a lot of what we're reading is really scary. Women are giving up jobs in order to be able to stay home and look after their children. And if you want to do that, that's that's fantastic. But if you are forced to do it, I don't think it's fair. So I would say better tax there. And then my second one is actually around employers and employer disclosure of, what is your gender pay gap? What is your actual gender balance within your company? What is your maternity return rate? Do women come back or not? And I think being armed with this information is really, really important to women who are actively making decisions of where to work.
Yeah, quite scarily, I saw reported the other day the government's thinking about removing the need to disclose gender pay gaps. So that's definite going backwards.
That's a different panel altogether.
Bev, what's your one policy change? I think you've probably also got a list.
Getting rid of this government would be my policy change. I think look the practical would be, if we look at examples where they've succeeded, is looking at some of the Nordics. So policy change would be around that societal shift that we need. Kind of, not the plaster on a shark bite stuff. It's genuine shifting, and that comes from, like Romi said, building on tax breaks for around children, subsidising childcare. Let's subsidise childcare, not owning cars and whatever else we're subsidising, because there's probably a load of bullshit we do. When you look at the Nordics, that's why they're actually succeeding in their societies. Look at the way we educate our children. Actually, this stuff should be in the curriculum. This should be a core part of the curriculum, part of maths. This is not an add-on. Teachers don't know how to teach it because they were never taught it. So I think those would be the things. But I am slightly cynical. I don't believe this regime want us to have that power. And well done to all of you for actually getting that power for yourselves. Pass it forward. If you have friends who don't know this stuff, make them, nudge them, kick them into, if you have children, teach them, because this is the stuff. So that's for me. This is.
Can I just make a slight advert for the FT? We have a new charity called the Financial Literacy and Inclusion Campaign. It's ftflick.com, and that has loads of resources for teachers and also for families. So we are trying to bring financial literacy onto the curriculum, but also into people's homes. So I think that, it's something that the FT should be doing, and we are doing it now. So I'm really pleased. Selina.
Yeah, so I agree with every single point that everyone has said. For me, kind of the ethnicity pay gap, it's not mandatory to be reported. I think the government issued some guidance. They said that they're not going to make it mandatory, but they're going to issue some guidance. At the same time, I think, and then like you said about the potential change to the gender pay gap as well, I do think the regime that we've got, this government probably won't take it seriously. And as Vicky mentioned in her brilliant article, that although we have got a female prime minister, it doesn't mean that the policies are in our best interest. So yeah, I just think that just means it's a rallying cry for all of us to just stay plugged in and do what we can on an individual level to just make sure that we're taking care of our financial well-being, because we can't leave it to anybody else, unfortunately. But all of those policy suggestions, I think childcare and ones that you've mentioned as well, I think they're super, super important.
So I want to throw it open to the audience in a minute, but I just wanted to end on a positive note. Bev, you've been working to diversify finance for a long time, and I just wanted to ask each of the panellists if there's something they're optimistic about in terms of women, the economy and our investment. So Bev, over to you first.
Yeah, I think I'm just optimistic about actually how far we have come in 50 years. So I'm going to do a plug. We're running a campaign called Fearless Women. It's fearlesswoman.co.uk. It's a year long, looking at the history of since we were allowed to invest in this country, and we're actually running a competition to close the image gap of what it means to be a female investor. So drop us some photos. Emily's going to be a judge for us, and I think you get an account with some money in to invest if you win. So anyway, sorry, a little plug from us, but that's what I'm optimistic about.
No, that's very positive. Romi.
I think I'm optimistic about the women that I continuously meet and who are looking to really change things up. And it really is actually up to us to keep pushing the door down, because if we are going to change the fact that there are only 8 female leaders of FTSE 100 companies, it really means we need to be pushing down the door.
Selina, last word to you.
Yeah, I'm optimistic by all of you sitting here, being here. Emily's platform that she's built, what Romi's doing, what the FT are doing, what Bev's doing. I'm really optimistic that we are all here together collectively. There are so many brilliant people pushing for change. So that's what makes me optimistic.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Right, I would really like some audience questions. There's a mic. Lady here first.
Hi, everyone. My name's Christina. It's really nice to be here. I do agree with you. I think education is key, but I'm quite a newbie of how I can control my finances. How do we seep through all the noise that is out there, or the information that we are bombarded with? What is a good and quality information? What is a true information? Are there any resources that we can follow? Basically, what is not fake news, and where do we go to make sure that the information that we are being given has the best in heart for our financial independence and freedom? Thank you.
Well, you know what I'm going to say. But Romi, what do you say?
I do think you should identify companies that resonate with you. I mean, at PensionBee, we publish a lot about pensions in particular. We think it's really important for people to read and just spend time with the information. There's no shortcut to doing that. But I think that there are a lot of companies out there who can help. And of course, Vestpod. I mean, that's why we're all here.
That's great advice. Anyone else?
I'll just say from an investing side, as opposed to just getting control of your finances, and I definitely think Vestpod is where you should go for that. Investing is an art, not a science. So is a lot of noise out there, but a lot of it is around finding out what's fake news or not. And that's what a lot of people in the city are doing. The real ones are artists, they're not scientists. Yeah. So unfortunately, there is a lot of noise, and that's what you have to wade through for the investing side.
Anybody else?
I think you should plug the FT because a lot of people are daunted by the FT.
Oh.
I think you should speak up for yourself.
Well, I have worked there for 20 years, so I do believe in my product. And, we do try to put things simply. And in fact, it is, it's very easily accessible. We write in very plain English. A subscription is not cheap, but if you work for a company, you may find that they've got a corporate subscription that they're not telling you about. So if you do work for a company, ask them if they've got an SCFT subscription. They will have what they call seats, and probably some of them are not being taken up. And we love women readers. I'm engaged in all the women's readership engagement activities. So please, please read the FT, comment, and tell us what we're doing right and wrong. I'm always on email. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I'd be delighted to have your feedback. I know all the right people to talk to, so it will go to the right people. So thank you. Right, sorry, there's a lady over here who had a question. Yes, here. Just wait for the mic.
Thank you. Hi. I've got so many questions actually, but I just wanted to make a point, and I apologize because it's not really a question, but because childcare has been mentioned so much, there's going to be a march on the 29th of this month of October by Pregnant and Screwed, and it's all about childcare reform. So if that's something that's important to anyone, I just had a baby as well, and I'm a freelancer, and I'm trying to sort out my pensions as well. So it's a whole mess, and definitely childcare costs is really important.
So Pregnant and Then Screwed do great work, don't they?
Yeah. They do, yeah. And there's the march for mummies on the 29th.
Thank you. Thank you. That was the best sort of comment, not a question. Unlike some of the panels I've been to. Like one back here and yeah.
Hello, thank you. My name is Bimpe. And this is amazing. And I'm, again, gratified that there's this sort of flow of information around for younger ladies. I'm of a slightly older generation. But what I wonder is, speaking to the FT, isn't time for more activism in this area? Because there's so much activism around climate change. We talked about the content, and I'm aware of the campaign, and I'm aware of the cost of accessing the information online, which is not fake news. And so how can we get this information to the much younger generation?
Oh.
I mean, there's a lot going on in sex education at age 8, in schools. Why isn't there money education at age 8?
But your financial literacy.
I know.
That is all free.
But the schools don't tap into it.
No.
So, we know because we're here. There are a lot of people out there who, if it's taught, even the parents of the kids in school would be aware if it's part of the curriculum. So when I say activism, is getting the government to almost insist that just as sex education and knowing to recycle is becoming the norm, this should be the norm. It should be part of our DNA going forward.
Complete.
That's
Oh, yeah.
the question whether the FT or any of the ladies on the panel
Yeah.
see this as an activism issue.
That's a really interesting point. I think you're absolutely right. We should be more activist. We should all be more activists, and we can all be advocates, actually. Those of us who are financially literate can be advocates. And, you know, we are trying really hard to get the FT into schools. I know a lot of other media are trying to get into schools, and there are a lot of other resources. Well, you may know of other
I
resources.
think what this lady's trying to say is that, you know, if it was a policy response from government, you wouldn't have to have FT and other organisations. And there's a lot of people out there trying
Yeah.
to do financial literacy, trying to get into schools. You know, lots of I don't, banks, not to name any of them. Lots of organisations. I know
Yeah.
the Bank of England have a scheme that they send out, but because it's not part of the curriculum, it means that schools aren't incentivised to teach it. And I think that's if we as a collective got together to make it and campaign to make it a policy as part of the curriculum that's graded in the same way that you're graded on every other subject, then actually you'd have the avalanche of skills that we're looking for, right? I'm gonna take that one away.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm gonna take that one away.
That's really great point.
Emily, you and me, we're having lunch. Watch this space.
Okay.
Slightly related. I've got 8-year-old twin girls, and I mean, culturally, I come from a similar background as Bev, and you know, we are taught about women don't think about money; it's greedy. And so I've got twin girls, and one always is happy to part with her money, and the other one is like, "I'm saving it because once you get poor, you need the money, so you know, I'm going to save it." And I just feel like I want to do that education, but then obviously the awareness has to start from me. But you as moms, you know, some of you, how do you do this at a level where you can teach an 8-year-old to think about the money mindset and things like that? I know it's very complicated, but I'd love some tips. It would be very
See,
helpful.
when you said you've got two and they both behave differently. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got a 10 and 8-year-old, and they're not twins, but they similarly, my son will save because he recognizes if he saves, he can buy something bigger. With my daughter is happy to buy lots of toot on a constant basis. You know, how many teddies and crap can you buy? Yeah, I think, yeah, I don't
She wants to buy, but she's saying, you need to give me the money because I want to save that.
Oh, she's really smart.
But she assumes that I'm going to be poor one day. And I keep telling her, I'm never going to be poor. I'm assuring you that. I don't know whether that's right. I'm hoping.
I do all the traditional things, I'll be honest. We have piggy banks, and we put money in there, and I'm going to admit it, but I recently opened a trading account for my 5-year-old, and together we chose stocks that he has heard of. And we invested, I think it was literally about £10. And I'm teaching him that sometimes it goes up and sometimes it goes down, and over the long run it goes up. And I think just getting I think I think sometimes it has to start at home, because it's going to take a long time for the government to do the things we want them to do.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Right. Anyone else?
Can you pause it down?
Hi, I'm Charisse. And I was wondering if I could ask about reconciling my politics and social beliefs with my desire to gain more capital. I'm a musician and I'm starting to level up a bit, but the musicians I'm trying to pay will equally be like, F the establishment. Also, that fee is way too small for you for me to work with you. And I mean, yeah, being the daughter of a politician as well has left me being like very inspired by the social activism, but also as the first daughter left with the burden of caring for that mother who has been anti-establishment. So sorry, it's a bit personal, but it's, you know, I want to be ethical, but also I'm getting quieter about my desire to earn capital because the people in my community are anti-capitalist. But to protect them, I want to get capital. So
Thank you.
what do I do?
Selina, is that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, I mean, I think money is a tool at the end of the day. We can't do anything if we don't have any money. We can't help others. We can't grow our businesses. We can't, live the lifestyles we want unless we have some sort of money. And I think what Bev said before about, we're talking about ESG, but, yes, we want to do everything with a good cause, but at the same time, why are you working? Why are you a freelance musician? It's for the passion, but equally you have to pay your bills. You have to do what you need to do to get by. So I think, it doesn't have to be either or. You can, gain capital. And as a freelancer, as a musician, there is a freelance pay gap as well. I'll tell you that. So, I just don't think it has to be this kind of binary, this either or. It doesn't have to be like that. Number one. Number two, we're all conditioned by our, surroundings and how we've grown up and the kind of messages we've got from our caregivers, parents. I grew up in a household that didn't talk about money. I talk about in the book the fact that I asked my mum when I was about 8, how much do you earn? And she gave me a really terrible look that said, we don't talk about this here. And now I spend a lifetime talking about money. So, I think sometimes we need to get rid of the kind of shackles, because sometimes those old ways of thinking are holding us back. And like I say, it doesn't need to be either or. Why shouldn't you live well? Why shouldn't you retire well, even as a freelancer, creative person? So yeah, yeah. Sometimes
Cheers.
those shackles off.
Thank you. I think we've got time for a couple more. Yep.
There we go. Sorry. I actually don't have a question. I just have a piece of information that I came across quite recently. It's called Benjamin Talks, and it teaches young financial products. And I wanted to share with everybody who has a kid or.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, over here. I think this might have to be the last question. No pressure.
Hi, hello. I just had a question around how do you guys personally balance financial enjoyment versus financial resilience? I always find it something so hard to balance, is enjoying the money you make, but then feeling guilty about not saving enough, etc.
That's a great question. Bev, let's start with you.
I'm guessing you're a lot younger than me. And I think that balance changes as you get older and maybe your pot of money grows or your security grows around it. It's a skill we all need to learn. And the way I suppose I balance it, what I found in my life is when I've ended up with more things, I've actually ended up not enjoying them. So actually having less things and doing less things, but doing them quality things and doing them well, means that I can enjoy and not just spend, if that makes sense. Instead of going out every day, maybe going out once, but doing it really well means that I can enjoy the 6 in my pajamas at home. So I would say if you feel like you don't have the balance in your savings versus what you're spending, is put it down on paper, look at it in front of you. Once you can see it in front of you and what's going out, all of a sudden the things that you were spending on maybe don't feel as important, and you'll be able to recognize what is important to you. And then you'll have the security of knowing you're actually putting stuff away. And actually there's something about watching that pie grow and watching that compound interest grow on that pie. And all of a sudden you kind of enjoy that. It becomes a bit of a game. So that's what my thing would be. Just if you know what it looks like, then you're more likely to have that balance.
Romi, have you got anything to add to balance?
Yes, I think about it in terms of investing in your salary of the future. And that's what I would focus on sorting out. One of the things that we've learned at PensionBee is that people have this anxiety about later on. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know how they're going to get the money for that. And I think once you have some comfort that you will have a salary in the future, it really opens up the path to enjoyment today, because that anxiety will go away.
Selina, what do you tell your clients about this?
I think it's quite interesting because there is an incredible amount of guilt, isn't there, when it comes to money and what we're doing. We're just made to feel so guilty if we, if we start investing and we make a mistake, if we, have a bad month and we overspend, we kind of kick ourselves so much. And I find it so frustrating. I absolutely hate it. I think we need to just, as women, not be so hard on ourselves, number one, because number two, a lot of men are allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to make financial mistakes. They're allowed to, overspend, and they're not feeling guilty about it. So we need to, not feel guilty about it either. At the same time, managing money doesn't mean that you don't have any fun or enjoyment with it. I always talk about like a budgeting method called 50, 30, 20. And I like to highlight that one because it's got an actual wants category in it when you are budgeting. So you can put some money aside to enjoy the things that you like today. And at the same time, you've also got a category for savings in the future. But I think, we definitely need to get rid of the guilt that we feel when it comes to money and money mistakes and investing mistakes, because, a lot of people, average white men, as they say, sorry to any white men that are in the room, they get away with so much, and we always feel really, really guilty if we do anything different or do anything or make any mistakes, and we shouldn't.
Thank you. That's a great thing to end on. It's now lunchtime, so please don't feel guilty about enjoying.
Yes, enjoy
a
lunch.
Lovely spread. And thank you so much to the panel, and thank you all.